your home for Kings talk and so much more.
Live and local.
Allen Stiles on Sactown Sports.
Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports, taking you up to 2 p.m. Well, they have my name now, thanks to Kyle. They're saying my name now, so I don't have to say that. I just have to get used to not having to say that anymore. Thank you, Kyle. Kyle whipped that up for me. I appreciate it. And Chris Biderman now joins us of the Sac Bee. Chris, thanks for joining us, man. How you been? I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, man.
Yeah, the flu's been going around. I missed a couple Kings games because of it. But you know, we're back on the horse. We're feeling better. We're back in it. We're ready for spring, ready for the stretch run of the NBA season. So happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Golf soon. I mean, I heard you're pretty nasty, but you know, you can teach me a thing or two.
Nasty, and you know, I guess is at playing at my best as an 8 handicap. I think there are a number of definitions for nasty, but you know, I'll take it.
Okay. All right. Well, I know some people at some parks around here at some courses, so don't worry. I'll have my people call your people.
Throw your weight around, man. I'm down.
That's right. 2025. I'm that guy now. I'm that guy. Chris Biderman is always that guy. Chris, the question is, do the Kings have enough guys to make a run at this thing? Just very, very simple. What are your expectations for the Kings for, you know, the second part? I know it's not halfway through, but the second half of the season.
Yeah, my expectations, particularly with the Victor Wembanyama news today, is that they are probably a play-in team and that it would be a great development for them if they could sneak into the 6th seed. But I think they're a play-in team, and frankly, like looking at the 6 games since, you know, Zach LaVine's been inserted into the lineup, it hasn't been very good, frankly. Like they've had 3 games against the New Orleans Pelicans, who have the worst record in the Western Conference. And I think the Kings are 19th in the NBA in net rating over that time. The win over Dallas, while it was impressive to see DeMar DeRozan score 40 points and then pull that out, that Dallas team lost all of their bigs. The Kings still turned the ball over 21 times. I just have a lot of questions about not the individual talent, because if you look at the individual talent of the team, you would say this is a pretty talented roster. I just don't know how well everything fits right now. You know, I think Malik Monk is an excellent six man off the bench. I think he's a pretty good starting shooting guard. He's never been a starting point guard before, and I have serious questions about how he can organize an offense that doesn't really have many distributors as it is. I think Keon Ellis is obviously somebody who needs to play, but he plays the same position as the guy you just traded for and are paying a lot of money to in Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're taking a future Hall of Famer / you know, one of the best clutch players in the league, DeMar DeRozan, off the floor. I know the numbers are good. I saw your guy Brandon Nunez tweet out or retweet somebody today who said the Keon Ellis, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Zach LaVine, Domantas Sabonis lineup is like plus 15 or something in 9 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a really small sample, and I have the same questions like, is there anybody who's really initiating the offense in that lineup if that sample size grows? So the Kings are going to be able to score. I just have I have a lot of doubts about their ability to defend. And for that reason, until they show otherwise, I have a hard time believing that they're a playoff team right now.
Well, you know, it's interesting because trade deadlines, obviously, everybody is working with the same deadline. We're talking to Chris Biderman of the Sacramento Bee. Everybody is working with the same deadlines, and you decide to make certain moves. Now, we've seen some huge moves made with Luka Doncic and, you know, De'Aaron Fox. That move with the Spurs, that was more so for the future. If you look at the Mavs and what they did last season, you added supplemental pieces to what you already had. So you're not changing the whole face of your team to try to make some type of run in a couple months. So my question to you, as we sit here and we say, hey, 6 games is a small sample size, we know, because we've had conversations, you know, off the record about what this team is actually trying to accomplish. They really want to make the playoffs this season. So because of that, that timeline is a little bit different. So my question to you is how much time is okay enough? We know what this team is going to be. It's been 6 games and we can say that's early. When is it no longer early?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting late early. I
Right.
would say,
Right.
right? Like to make that move late in the season. And look, I understand the players are in a difficult position, right? Like they're adjusting to a new coach,
Mhm.
they're adjusting to basically a completely new core. They have added depth in Jake LaRavia, which has been helpful to them for
He
sure.
needs more time. He needs more
Yeah,
time out there. I think so.
but that's a cut, like that's a decision the Kings made. Like you make a coaching change mid-season and you trade De'Aaron Fox midway through the season. Like, yeah, you're putting the players in a really tough spot. So I have a hard time using like the lack of cohesion, the lack of practice time, all of that as an excuse for this team, because these are decisions that the team made.
Mhm.
And whether or not you want to, you could quibble about, well, was this a Monty McNair decision? Is this a Vivek Ranadive series of decisions? I think those are discussions to be had. But the point is the Kings made these decisions to make all these changes midway through the season with an emphasis on trying to get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that just raises your level of difficulty, I think, given how crowded the Western Conference is.
Mhm.
So, like, I think I just have a hard time. Like, if it were me, if I'm running the team and just to editorialize, and I have to trade De'Aaron Fox, which I still don't think the Kings had to trade De'Aaron Fox. I think they could have waited until the offseason and still made a push.
Mhm.
But if it's me and I'm trading a franchise player, I don't really see the point in racing to the middle, right?
Right.
Like throughout the NBA, there seem to be two directions that competent organizations want to go to. They either want to contend and do everything they can to make a run at the conference finals or the finals, or they want to race to the bottom to accumulate as many draft assets as possible and draft their potentially next face of the franchise, right? And the
Mhm.
Kings, I guess they really want to make the playoffs, but they seem to be racing to the middle towards that purgatory area where the vast majority of the NBA wants to avoid.
Yeah.
And you have an aging roster. You're built around DeMar DeRozan, who's 35 in his mid 30s. You have Zach LaVine, who's probably on the back nine of his career more so than the front. And like you did get a little bit older with the De'Aaron Fox trade. If it were me making those decisions, I would have said, okay, even if you do make the playoffs, you're probably losing to OKC or Memphis in the first round. I would have rather taken the draft picks and then try to draft the next year in Fox
Mhm.
than race to the middle to potentially get, a handful of playoff games at home and be a first round exit. But that's just me editorializing. I understand why the Kings might have, they have their reasons, obviously, to want to make the playoffs. The team's history
Mhm.
suggests that, making the playoffs obviously is really rare and hard to do for them. So I get it, but it's not the route that I would have gone.
Chris Biderman just let it sing right there. That was great stuff, Chris. I just got to say, that was great stuff. Talking to Chris Biderman of the Sacramento Bee. With all that being said, Chris, what do you think is the timeline? So I have named this team the interim beam team, because we don't know how long any of these dudes are going to be on the team. What is the timeline you would give the interim beam team? Do you think that if they don't make the playoffs, and I guess it's just any move, right? Anybody from the starting lineup, let's say it that way. So if they don't make the playoffs, just because we know if they make the playoffs, they're running it back. Even if they get swept, if they find a way in the playoffs, they are running it back. Let's say they don't make the playoffs. What do you think the timeline is? Do they start looking to move a DeMar DeRozan? Do they see, hey, is Zach LaVine's 3-point percentage comes back to life? Do they see if anybody is out there? If they don't make the playoffs, what do you think the timeline is on this interim beam team?
I kind of think if they don't make the playoffs, and this is just me speculating. I want to
Mhm.
be clear about that. But if I think it might be a clean house situation. I think it
Mm.
might be, they might be looking for a new GM. They might be looking for a new head coach, right? It seems pretty clear that internally the mandate is make the playoffs. And if you're
Doug
Doug Christie,
Christie?
I don't know. I don't know. I think, Vivek Ranadive has shown, or at least the Kings have shown under
Yeah,
Vivek, to have a pretty quick trigger finger.
yeah.
So with all the expectations and all the moving parts this year, if they don't make the playoffs after all these decisions were made, I would lean towards, and again, me speculating, I would lean towards there being massive organizational changes. And if you're DeMar DeRozan and you're playing the last couple years of your career.
Right.
Do you want to be part of that? It wouldn't surprise me if DeMar DeRozan did end up getting moved if they didn't make the playoffs. But if they did, I could see DeMar wanting to come back. He's, obviously close to LA. The Kings being in the mix, him being a focal point. Like I do think that would be appealing to him. But if they don't make the playoffs, I mean, one of the last things De'Aaron Fox said to me, I was covering the Kings in Philadelphia right before the trade happened. One of the last things he said was, it's Sacramento, like that it's constantly changing, like that you always see changes. So, given what the expectations were this season, given all the changes that we've seen this season, if they don't make the playoffs, I have no reason to believe there wouldn't be more drastic changes in this offseason.
In the business world, we call that high turnover rate. You would say the Kings have a very high turnover rate. Chris Biderman, outstanding stuff, man. Look, I know you said you had the flu, but you're back better than ever. I don't know if I was just watching the new Captain America. I don't know if you got the super serum or something like that, but you're on fire right now. Be sure to follow Chris Biderman on social media. Be sure to find all of his great pieces and articles on the Sacramento Bee. Go check that out. Chris, thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
On the other side, as Chris has a conversation, or we just had a conversation with Chris about whether or not the Kings should try to get to the playoffs and being stuck in a bit of that purgatory, we have the conversation, what is the job of an owner, right? What is the job of an owner? Is the job to just get to the playoffs and be entertaining, or do you have to want to win a championship? We hear from what the Milwaukee Brewers owner had to say on the other side. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.